everybody. Welcome to another edition of Elevating with Marcia and Mike. I'm your host, Marcia Hawkins, along with Mike Athas. And today we're going to be talking about the impact of a local agent versus a call center agent and what the difference means to you as the insured. So, welcome aboard, Mike.
Hey, Marcia. This is a great topic. I think that you and I both have a lot of experience as local agents, and working locally in our communities is always near and dear to my heart. But I also we have agents all over the country too, with Blue Wave Financial, I have agents all over the country. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of differences across the board, and I think that as the consumer, people need to know what they're getting. So excited to chat with you about it today.
Yeah, before we jumped on, I was mentioning, about, the insured's responsibility of the contractual agreement and, getting people to really understand the role of an agent. Like, for instance, I'm a multi-line agent, meaning I do everything from home, auto, business, workers' comp, life, health. I do everything. And it's amazing to me how many people never open their policies, never look at them. And I always tell people the time to find out you don't have coverage is not when you have a claim. Another thing that people don't realize is that agents aren't allowed to get involved in a claim. It's a conflict of interest, which, I have people call up and say, okay, I have a tree in my yard, and if the tree falls, whose fault is it? And I'm like, well, there could be 100 scenarios about that tree. That's
Yeah.
the job of the adjuster to decipher who's responsible and whatnot. So, a lot of people don't know that. And this is kind of where a local agent versus, and when we say local, we don't just mean local geographically. We mean local, meaning you're going to be able to call your agent and get them on the phone and talk to them. And you're
Yeah.
not going to be calling a call center and getting a customer service representative who those in and of itself that are attached to a local office are probably the workhorse of the agency. CSRs are amazing. They just are. However, when you're talking about, I'll call it a big box insurance company, that you're trying to get a term life policy to cover mortgage protection or final expense or something like that, you really want to structure your policy right. And that's where, actually talking to an agent, knowing that you can send them a text message or, communicate with them and really, make sure that you understand what you're purchasing, understanding how it works, and more importantly, understanding what you qualify for.
Yeah, I think understanding what you qualify for is a big deal because especially the way that insurance is advertised, and I'm going to talk more from the life side of the spectrum here because that's my background. I think that you hear on TV or you hear on the radio, I have $1 million policy or I have a couple $1 million policy and it's $27 a month. And the reality of that is that it really isn't. It's so much of that is a bait and switch type of a thing because
Absolutely.
they're quoting out, I mean, a 20-something-year-old individual that has perfect health. And that's not America. That's not the typical client. It's a very minuscule number of people that would actually qualify for that rate and that price. And they're probably quoting like a 10-year term or a five, like some extremely low
Ridiculously
amount of
short.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I found, and it's been a while since I've been face to face, kneecap to kneecap, selling life insurance policies at kitchen tables. But one thing that I found was a lot of consumers don't understand that, and it's funny because it's not the only product out there that there's a bait and switch being advertised by any means. I mean, go into any type of a holiday weekend and you're gonna have bait and switch ads all over the place for mattresses or for cars or for whatever. But I think as the consumer, if you can sit down with an agent that I'm not saying has to be it has to be face to face, but if you can talk to someone that is able to broker multiple insurance carriers and really show you options of what you can qualify for and explain to you why you qualify for it too. I think that's a really important thing because some people think that, oh well, I had a heart attack last year, but I had a stent put in and now I'm a new man. I should be able to get whatever amount of coverage. And it's like,
Wrong.
Yeah, totally wrong, right? But think about it from the insurer's perspective, from the insurance company's perspective. Would you, if you were the insurance company, would you give that policy to that individual that had a heart attack last year? If I were the insurance company, absolutely not. But being able to sit down with an agent, and Blue Wave Financial has agents all over the country that can do this, run through what you qualify for, and help you through that process to make sure you get the most amount of protection for what you're paying for. I think it's a really big deal. And I know, Marcia, on your side with the property and casualty, tell me more about that. I mean, you have stories of being able to sit down with people and really just help not only protect them, but streamline money, save them money, and put them in a better position than when you found them.
Yeah, a couple of things. You talk about the bait and switch. There's ads out there right now where they're talking about how you can pick your price for your auto insurance. Nothing could be further from the truth. You simply cannot do that. You might be able to come up with a monthly amount, but there's going to be the down payment or the balloon payment on the other end of that. So
Yeah.
for people that think that they can pick the price of their auto insurance every month. There's so many things that go into it. The biggest thing, I get calls all the time from people and say, why did my car insurance go up? Holy cow. And then I, go into the RMV and find out that they had a, hit and run accident and they've got 10 points on the driving record. And I
Yeah.
have to call them back and say, did you have a car accident? I might have. I don't really remember. Well, guess what? The RMV did, and so does the insurance company. And we have nothing to do with that. Your driving record is between you and the insurance company and the RMV. It has nothing to do with what we set. And a lot of times people think the insurance agent is the one that sets the price. And on the property and casualty side, I'm all about, doing reviews and meeting with clients. If a client requests a review, I try to accomplish that within 2 to 3 weeks because I have shown up on a farm to find out that an 80 by 100 barn, 3-story hay barn is not on the policy. That thing gets struck by lightning and they call me up to put a claim in and there's no barn on there, no barn, no claim,
That's a big deal.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I really, a lot of, I would say 60 to 70% of my clients tell me they never open the policies, they get them in the mail, they throw them in a file folder, and that's that. Again, the time to find out. And don't assume that because you say something, your agent knows, is recording that into their brain as to that you want a change to your policy. A change to your policies has to, be written and, signed off on. And when we make a change on a policy, we always send the new declaration page to reflect those changes. And it's up to the insured to look at that, to make sure it's exactly that there was no loss of communication, whether it be, face to face or over the phone or via email or whatever. You want to make sure everything's done correctly. Where I get upset a little bit is that I make myself available 7 days a week. So when a client calls me up and says, "Well, I thought this was on my policy," well, guess what? You refused to meet with me for 3 weeks, and 2 years later, when you told me you would call me and let me know that you were able to meet with me, and then you find out there's something on the policy or not, there's something not on the policy that you thought was on there. So it's just important as an insured. Insurance is expensive. Make sure you know what you're paying for every month. And if you don't understand it, ask the agent for a review. Just like on a life insurance policy, you said something that really struck a chord with me. There's two things that buy life insurance, and it's not what people think. It is your age and your health. It is not money. The premium is going to be reflective of that. So, one of the biggest things I want to drive home right now is how many people say, "Oh, I'm good. I don't need life insurance. I have it with my job." Well,
Oh yeah.
you might be 40 years old right now, and let's say you stay with that job till you're 65 and retire. Do you really think that life insurance is going to be cheaper at 65 than 40? No, absolutely not. So, and everybody is one prescription and one diagnosis away from not qualifying and then being forced onto a guaranteed issue policy, which has its benefits. However, it's not ideal. So I had the fortunate slash unfortunate opportunity to write a policy for a family out in Hawaii. They're my ohana. They are family to me. I had gone out maybe 5 years ago and they were like, you know what, we really need to get life insurance. I did the quotes up. For whatever reason, when I left Hawaii, we had kind of shelved it for a little while because they are family. And I knew if they decided they wanted it, they would call me. Fast forward, a couple years later, the wife ended up losing all of her limbs due to
Oh, wow.
sepsis, had a
Yeah.
massive heart attack, and she no longer qualified for life insurance. Ironically, her mom had bought $100,000 policy on her. However, had we taken a term policy with living benefits for $1 million, which is what they wanted to cover their mortgage, she would have been able to tap into that because she was now critically and chronically ill.
Yeah.
And she really understood that. So she called me and she's like, look, we need to get a policy on my husband. We need to do 3 policies on the kids. I want these done immediately. We got them done, got them all taken care of. And a week later, a friend of hers husband died in a car crash. 5 children, 38 years old, 5 children, husband dies in the car accident. They have no life insurance.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking.
So she went on Facebook and said, "Hey, look, I don't sell insurance, but here's the deal." And she went on, and she said, she mentioned my name. She was able to help us and get this taken care of. And, again, the time to find out you don't qualify or you no longer can afford insurance is not when you've had a health issue or when you've had a massive fire, to your barn or your, God forbid, your home. It's just, you got to be a little bit of a planner. And I stress to my clients all the time that life insurance is not something you need to die in order to cash out. Because people say, why do I want to buy all this life insurance and leave it for everybody else after I'm gone? Well, first of all, if you have a spouse and children, that should be a no brainer. That said, with the living benefits component to life insurance, how important that is if somebody becomes chronically or critically ill.
You brought something. I mean, you're talking about selling policies. I know you live in Massachusetts, but you're selling policies in Hawaii, and but you're also providing the service to those families, and you're helping them, and you're available for them. And I mean, we were talking about how before we came on air that you were up at 4:30 in the morning. I know that you're available for your clients, and so I think
Absolutely.
that's a big difference between going with an independent agent like yourself or me I'm not just solely saying you need to go through us. There's millions of independent agents throughout the country, but
Mhm.
that compared to a call center where you're talking to a call center rep that you go to call them, they may or may not be there. I know firsthand from hiring tons of agents over the years that a lot of agents jump ship and go from one organization to another, and so they're never there to fully service their clients. They kind of orphan their clients wherever they are. But I think being able to service your customer and help them through whatever their needs are, that's huge. I mean that's how you make a real impact in this type of an industry. So I love the fact that you're able to do that, Marcia.
Well, more importantly, though, Mike, if you call into a call center, some of the larger big box insurance companies that you hear on Sirius XM or you see on the TV, where 9.99, what's your price? 9.99, what's your
Sure.
price? 9.99. When you call those, they're going to basically find out, what your pain and pleasure point is. So what they're going to want to find out um, how much you can afford per month, and then they're going to structure a policy around that. And most likely, if you're older and you're unhealthy, it's going to be a guaranteed issue policy, and they're going to suck you in on buying that policy. You get off the phone feeling good that now you have life insurance, but it's not what you think. The difference is they call you, they call me. I'm going to explain to them, how we can achieve that goal. Like I'm a big fan of IULs. You
Yeah.
can structure those things a million ways to accomplish the goal of a whole life or a guaranteed issue. Well, guaranteed issue, you're kind of stuck with it, but my point is that you can get a face value and maybe add to it later down the road to accelerate that if you're healthy, of course. But that's where we come in. We're able to explain it to the client so that they understand what they're buying. And what I found is so important on that from an agent's perspective in terms of growing your business, when you take the time to explain everything to the client, and the client has gotten a policy that they can afford, that it accomplishes their goals, what are they then going to do? And they're
Uh,
going to go to the pool house or the golf course and they're going to say, hey, I just talked to my agent. I was able to get, this life insurance policy. She explained everything because I get health insurance calls all the time. And people will say to me, nobody will explain to me what I've bought. I had a client that called up, they had a stroke. And what did they have? They didn't have health insurance, they had accident insurance.
yeah,
And
of
some
course.
fast talking agent at a call center talked him into it, got their commission, and
Yep.
left this poor woman with a stroke without any health insurance. Now, mind you, she should have known it was not a very expensive policy. A healthy 18-year-old is going to pay about $150 a month for health insurance. She was 50 years old and not healthy. And it was like $38 a month. I mean, a bell
Yeah.
should have gone off at
You
some
need to
point.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, you
If
need
it
to
sounds
be
too good to be true.
an informed consumer. But that said, if you happen to fall victim to a fast talking call center, quote unquote agent, that's the type of stuff that can happen. So that is the difference, Mike, between calling a call center and talking to an agent. We eat what we kill. No pun intended here, but we cannot afford to mislead people and take them down a path where we know it's going to come back to bite them because we rely on referrals and we rely on fostering relationships. And that, my friend, is the difference between working with a local agent versus a call center. And when I mean local, it means someone that's willing to give you their cell phone number and walk you through the process and help you with that and help you understand what you're paying for and what the benefits are.
One last point on that, because you were talking about people that have fallen victim to not understanding what's in their policies. I think I know I personally am more than willing to sit down with anyone, even if you went through one of those 1-800 number call centers, whatever, and you got a great policy, because you can get a good policy through there too. I'm willing to sit down with clients and say, yes, this is a good policy, keep it. But
Mm-hmm.
maybe these are the other things you should look at. And I think that just because you went through that approach one time doesn't mean you have to stick with that approach. You can always, you need to find someone that will pick up
Spot
the
on.
phone and really be able to serve your needs and put your priorities first.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, in summary, Mike, there's a couple of things that buy you insurance. Claims are affected on property and casualty side. Valuations, if you're driving a really expensive car or a junk car, if your house is worth 1 million or it's worth 500, there's so many things that go into that. Please understand it's not the agent that sets the prices, it is the carriers, but your financial history, your medical history, your claims history, there's so many things that go into that. And that's something that a local agent that you can call 7 days a week and get information from is going to be more likely to explain to you and bring you down the path that you need to go down versus a call center that you'll probably never ever speak to that person ever again. And that is the fundamental difference. So, all right, well, that was a very good topic. We've been talking about covering this for quite some time. Again, you're tuning in to Elevating with Marcia and Mike. I'm Marcia Hawkins along with Mike Athas. Tune in next week where we'll have another informative podcast. Until then, make it a great week.